So I made these leather rings a while ago and I really loved them, but I was thinking, is there a way to make them even better? Let's find out. My name is Randy and I like to do arts and crafts. So I've been wearing these for quite a while. It's just thin leather with some tooling and I did all the tooling by hand. But I really wanted to try and see if I can make something a little bit more intricate. As you might know, I got this laser engraver a little while ago and I've been experimenting with it ever since. And I was thinking about what else I could make with it. And then I thought, why not make a new pair of rings? So I started out by making a design just on paper and then I just converted it to black and white on my computer so I can use this file to send to the laser engraver. The leather I'll be using, it's nice and bendy. It's quite thin, but I thought it would be smarter to start off by doing some tests. So I just prepared my laser. I just turned it on and I put my glass in front. I'm going to put on my goggles in a little bit, but I first want to show you. I just drew a little square and a line and I set it to these settings. I'm going to look at the target area. I'm just going to push this one and it's going to show me where it's going to burn. I think that's going to be fine. So now I can move to the next step and those are my settings. I'm going to choose leather. This is what it's recommending, but I want to try some different settings. So I'm going to start by putting the power on 100 and the speed at 100 because I want to see what is going to happen. So I'm just going to say start and it will just upload and it's going to engrave. And I'm just going to show you real time how long it's going to take at 100%. And I'm doing this as kind of a test grid to see what my results are going to be and how long it's actually going to take to engrave this. And I probably could have gone a little bit smaller, but I really want to keep this in my drawing. I really want to keep this as a reference. I'm not going to show you every other setting. I'm just going to go through it and tell you afterwards, but I wanted to show you how fast this is going at 100%. And it's actually already at almost 80% done. $94. And it says completed. I'm going to turn it off. And let's see how it looks. So that is really black and a really nice crisp line. Let's see what happens if I brush this out. It's actually quite a nice burn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to repeat this process and I'll show you how that's going to look. So my tests are done and as you can see there are some black smudges, but that's because I've been rubbing off the soot. But this is just to give you an idea of what my settings look like. So I've started with everything at 100, then I went to lower my speed to about 50%. The slower you go, the deeper the burn will be. You can also see that the line gets really thick. And then I went for the standard 10 watt setting. I don't know what the difference is between normal leather or 10 watt. I don't see a difference because this is the 10 watt at 100 and 100. It looks the same to me as the normal leather settings at 100. So I don't think there's any difference with that. But you can clearly see if you still have your speed at 100 and you put your laser down, it burns really shallow. Here you can really see a ridge. So it really burns deep. And here is really shallow. So the one thing I want to do is I want to test how it looks with a 100% speed, maybe a 50% laser, and then 2 or 3 repetitions, see how deep it goes. But if I'm looking at my results, I think I'm going to be fine with any of these settings. I'm just going to have to try it on the real design and see how it turns out. And I forgot to press record, but I put the laser on 100 and the speed on 85, and I think it's going good. So maybe we're going to be doing this in one go. Fingers crossed it's going to work. So in the meantime, I just cleaned my leather, and as you can see now the color difference is a little bit more clear, but my design is done. So let's have a look. I I think it looks good. It has a little bit of a scorch mark. The width is maybe a little bit too wide. So I think I'm going to try one more time. And I need to air out this room because it really smells of burnt hair. That's the downside of doing this with a laser engraver. It stinks. But I'm gonna air out the room and I'm gonna do the second one tomorrow and I'll show you the difference between the two. So I ended up making it a little bit smaller. I also went for the 100% laser and the speed at 85. And I don't know if you can see it, but it is a little bit more shallow and it has a lot less of these burn marks. I think I'm going to make both into rings. And what I want to try is I want to do some leather tooling on this one. I'm just going to wet the part I'm going to work on because you want to soften the leather. And I just stuck it down with some sticky tape just to make sure it doesn't warp too much. I'm just going to go right up to the lines and just push the background down. And then once it's dry, it should hold its shape. So I just finished the tooling and I think it looks really cool. So I'm just going to let it dry. That will set my tooling. And then I'm going to try and paint it. And I think I'm going to use my turquoise. Like, I really like this color. It really goes well with the brown. So I think it's dry. I'm just going to be painting using this tiny brush. I'm going to try and carefully paint around the edges that are still standing upright. Something like that. This is as close as I can get with the camera and all the equipment. And I'm not able to see what I'm doing. Probably not going to be able to film this. So I'm just going to show you how it ends up. So I'm done with the blue. Let's just start by putting the gold on the bigger areas. Oh boy, it's a little bit messy. So the gold is done as well. And first I wanted to do those other pieces gold as well, but I think it would be a little bit too much. So I can either go for an orange, a white, or a very dark stain. And I think I'm going to go for the dark stain. I think that's going to look the best. So that's this one. So I'll be trying to get that in these tiny areas. So wish me luck. I did manage to do it and I really like it. But now for the final step, I'm going to use this brown stain and I'm going to stain this one. And I think I'm also going to stain the top parts of this one as well. So this is just a little bit of a darker brown. So as this is a stain, it's not as dark as a dye. We're actually running quite low on this one because I use it quite a lot. It's my favorite color. It's actually this stain. Over time it gets a little bit more brown. I think I'm going to try and carefully put it on these areas as well. So I do think it needs that color. So let me just finish the staining process. So I let it dry overnight and I'm going to be cutting it out. And normally I would use my sharp pointy thing for that. But because this blade is very narrow, it tends to move a little bit. And I really would like a crisp line. So I think I'm going to be using this one. It's hard, so it's not going to be bending. And I'm going to try and do this while it's still attached so it doesn't slip. I'm just going to carefully place the blade in that groove and I'm just going to rock it. I can feel it going through. I'm just going to move to the next area and I'm really trying to keep it straight because I've got a feeling that I've messed this one up and that would be really sad. I think it went all the way through. Yeah, see, I messed that part up. Actually gave me quite a nice cut even though it had the sticky tape underneath. So it made a little mistake here, but I think it's not too bad. So I'm just going to do the same thing to the other three sides. Then we'll move on to the next step and that's finishing the edges. So I actually made a mistake. I wasn't supposed to cut away all the leather to that line. I was actually supposed to keep a little bit so I could finish the edge. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make this look good because that edge is really thin, but we're just going to have to try it. And the first thing I have to do is I have to thin them down. I want them to be a little bit more flexible because you're going to be wearing it. Don't want it to be bulky. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be shaving off part of this side. I'm basically just scraping it off. So I took off this much. That's quite a lot. So I don't know if you can see, but I took most of the thickness off. It's now really nice and floppy. If I do it with this, it's a lot more stiff. This is like flop, 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 flop. So it's going to be nice and bendy and it's not going to be as bulky. And I'm going to be beveling the edges and I'm going to use this tool for that. And what it does, it just takes off the corners, but I just want to get that little bit of sharpness to go. You can see these tiny little slivers coming off. Normally I would use a bigger bevel, this one, so that's a lot bigger. Let me show you. That would actually take off that much. You can see it takes off the whole corner, so that's way too much. So that's basically what the other tool does, but then just smaller. But I think we're ready to start rounding these corners. So what I'm going to be using is this weird tool. It's supposed to have a handle, but I lost it. But it just has different sizes of curves. And what you do is you take your piece of leather and put some water on the edges. And then I'm just going to start out with the biggest one. I'm just going to put it in there and start rubbing. And the friction should round the corners. Still needs a little bit of work, but this is the side I've already done. And this is the unfinished side. Let's cut this one to size. And I'm just going to use this blade again. I think I stretched it a little bit too much because if you remember, this was actually the big one. And look at how much I stretched it. I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. So normally I make my rings 65 millimeters. This is actually a 60 or a 9. This is a 62 or a size 10. These both fit very snugly. So I might have a little bit of playroom to make it a little bit bigger. But I'm just going to try and see how it's going to fit when I just cut it at the end. It's going to be 64. So on my hand, that's my middle finger. And the next thing I want to do is color the sides. In this case, I'm going to go for the dark stain. But don't be like me, wear gloves because your hands are going to be stained for a while if you use this stuff. So the next step is going to be making the holes for my stitching. And I'm just going to use this awl. So I'm just going to put one in the center and I'm going to put it in a slight angle. I don't want to go straight down. I want to go a little bit in. That way it has a little bit more grip to the leather. And then I'm just going to do one on each side. I'm just going to take my thread and I doubled it up. And I'm using a standard needle because there are already holes in the leather. I don't need a leather needle. And I'm just using a synthetic thread. And I'm going to start from the inside on the middle one. And I didn't put a knot or anything at the end. I'm keeping it long. And I'm going to go to the other side to one of the corners. Then I go to the opposite corner from the inside out. So then I'm going to go straight to the other side. Pull it tight. I'm going to go back to the other side. I'm just going to finish my cross by going to the center. So this is one side done. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. You really don't want to stick through your thread because that's going to make it impossible to pull and tighten everything. And I want to try and copy the sides. So I want to have them going the same direction. And then I can go back to the center one. There you go. So the stitching is done. Now I just have to finish it on the inside. I'm actually going to flip my ring just to make it a little bit easier on myself. So I've got both ends. And as you can see, I've got 3 lines. And I'm just going to make a knot. And I'm going to do a double twist. So I'm not going to do 1, but I'm going to go 2. Don't know how to explain it, but it gives me a little bit more of a secure knot. And because I did 2 loops around, it's not going to come loose right now. If you just do 1 loop, there's not enough friction tension on the thread to keep it in place, so it will come undone. And you have to do a second knot, but you don't have 3 hands to put your finger in the center and keep it from slipping. So do a double knot, and that way it will hold itself. So I'm going to do a second one, just the same with the double loop. I'm just going to pull. So now you can do a couple of things. You can either just cut off the ends and burn them so it won't come undone, or you can put a little bit of glue on here and that will keep it from fraying as well, and just cut off the ends. But yeah, that's it. It's time for the final reveal. So I almost forgot, I need to put a finish on this one, and I'm going to be using this one. It's the Super Sheen, and the other one I put a layer of beeswax on, and I'm just going to brush it on. And it starts out white, but it's going to dry clear. Normally I just use the beeswax, but if I put leather paint on anything, I need to use this finish. So I think it's now actually time for the final reveal. So here they are, all done. And I wanted to show you all the different ways you can use the engraver, because I already know I'm going to get a lot of hate on this video, because a lot of people think that using a laser engraver is cheating. But I feel like it is an enhancement to a craft, because I wouldn't be able to make these nice lines just by doing it by hand. But I just want to show you the difference it can make to have a tool, just like a knife or a letter stamp, anything that will help you create your craft. For this one, I did some hand tooling, I did some hand painting. This one I just finished off as is, and you can see the difference in quality. For me, yes, I would go for this one, but there's no harm in wanting the other one. It still looks really, really nice, but it's just a different vibe. But of course, it wouldn't be me if I'd made only these two. I wanted to make some more. I did the same design, but I mirrored it, so you get twice as much engraving. I also changed my settings, and I want to discuss you why. I'm going to show you an example of what happens if you put the wrong settings in your machine. So this one is actually the same as the previous one I showed, but because the engraving was too deep, the pieces started to lift, and I can show you a little bit more of an example. This was an engraving I did. I put the settings on 100% laser, and I slowed the speed down to about 80%. But as you can see, if you bend the letter, it opens up the lines. So if you want to do just line work, I would recommend going for a lighter setting. So this is the same, but at 100% laser and 100% speed. And as you can see, even though the letter is bent, it's not opening up the lines. And that's because the engraving is a lot more shallow, but it still gave me the result I wanted. You could use the other settings if you're going to be engraving large areas you want to black out, for example. That would be an idea if you just want to do like big pieces and you have bigger lines in between. So then you can set your machine a little bit higher. I would go for about 100% laser and speed at 70. If you go any further, it just damages the letter too much. You can also use it not to engrave the outside, because I made a design as a gift for a friend, but I engraved the inside. So that way you can give a personal message to a piece like this. So all in all, I made a lot of different designs, and I must say, out of all, these two are my favorites, but I really love to know which ones were your favorites and if you're going to try it yourself. If you have any questions, just leave a comment down below in the comment section and I will get back to you as soon as I can. But for now, I want to thank you for watching and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye everyone!